was starting to get a little depressed. And I actually have a slide here that I think would help with his talks. Unfortunately, the truth right now is something that makes people want to kill you. And it's a concern. So I'd like to start out by just trying to make you laugh a little bit. And I always do this by bringing my family into it. This is my 89-year-old father and my 15-year-old son. My 89-year-old father was a vice president of operations for Coca-Cola, and an engineer. I became a professor. My son over here is hoping to become a stand-up comic. This is the trend of our family. And my son, who insists that he is cooler than me, he's not, engages in constant debates with me about why he's cooler than me and everybody else. And I pointed out the other day that both he and his grandfather own an iPad. So they're equally cool, they're equally into technology. And he said, well, Mom, that's true. We both do own an iPad, but when Grandpa reads his iPad, he does it like this. And this is true. But it's an important point, this notion of breaking across demographic boundaries, breaking all kinds of boundaries. We heard a little bit of this with Dan when he talked about breaking rules and forward integrating and changing what business you're in. And of course, at the core of all this is innovation. And so what I'd like to do is spend the next about hour and a half with you and talk to you about a number of things tied to innovation, and at the base of innovation, the most important thing, which is core competence. I have been working in marketing and strategic marketing, working with corporations for quite a number of years, since 1987. I started when I was 12 years old. And over the course of that time, I found a number of problems and issues that corporations faced that I felt that I, as a member of the Academy, should try to help fix. And a lot of those had to do with corporations working in silos. Right? So each business has separate departments: engineering, marketing, sales. And when problems arise, very often they arise because of these silos. So marketing blames sales, sales blames marketing, and then they both get together and blame engineering because engineering's in the basement or whatever. And so what I tried to do was think about and leverage what was going on around us and what marketing and kind of higher level knowledge we had. And I fell into the field of systems dynamics. I think this was my father's engineering gene getting hold of me. And so I leveraged that idea, that notion of cause and effect relationships, to develop what I hoped was a way to understand marketing, and by marketing I mean big M marketing, not little m marketing, marketing strategy, in a way that could help to align the organization. So I developed the big picture framework, which I introduced many years ago at Northwestern University, and then was brought over to the Ross School of Business at University of Michigan to introduce. And I'm not going to be able to go through this entire framework with you today, nor do you want me to. But what I'd like to do is touch upon a couple of very important elements of this framework that I think are particularly of interest to the people sitting in this room. And before I do this, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I started out, after I got my MBA at the University of Chicago, working for an advertising agency, which is kind of interesting because now I'm very far away from that world. But I started out working for Morris the Cat. Anybody familiar with Morris the Cat? Ernie Keebler, a variety of cartoon characters, all of whom were shorter than me, so it was a very good time in my life. And when I started working on this cat food account, I'm not a cat person. I don't know if there are cat people in the room. I don't mean to offend you, but I'm not a cat person. I'm a dog person. And so I did what everyone has always been taught to do in marketing. I said, I need to go in and look at the competition. And so I went to the grocery store and I started looking at the cans of cat food and the pricing and the packaging and assessing what the market shares were of the different players. And as I was doing this woman came between me and the cat food. And she was rolling the shopping cart. She was a consumer. And I thought, I should probably watch her. She's the customer. Maybe I should take a look. So I started observing her. I watched her pick up the cans, look at the ingredients. I drew conclusions about things based on what she was doing. And she finally made her choice and put the cat food in the cart and rolled away. And I thought, I could probably learn even more about her if I looked at what other products she was buying in the store. So I stalked her through the store. And that was so helpful to me that I went back to the cat food display and did it again and stalked another consumer through the store and did this for quite a long time. And actually what happened over that period of my life was what had previously been a half-an-hour trip to the grocery store every once a week or so, now it was 2 hours every other day to go look at these consumers and see what was going on. I grew into several very promising relationships during that period of my life. But I learned a lot about the consumer and the customer, and that was important, and it helped me. And it helped me so much that in a few years I was given the job of director of marketing at a radio station in Chicago. And at this point in my life I felt like I had really arrived because, as I told you before, I'm in this competition with everybody to be the coolest. And this was a rock and roll radio station. It was very hip and cool. And here I was the director of marketing, so I had the backstage passes and the whole 9 yards. And so it was my dream job. And when I went to my first concert, which I got to go to concerts every night, I went to my first concert and I was sitting in the VIP section, and it was a Grateful Dead concert. And the lights went down and the music started playing, and I started thinking, we need to have better lighting on the banners, and we should have special programming in the parking lot, because when people are stuck in traffic, they should be listening to a certain thing. We have them trapped. And what about the t-shirt sales? Are they high enough? And after about 10 minutes, I realized that I hadn't heard a note of the music. I hadn't heard anything. I was working. And I realized at that point in my life that marketing had ruined my life. And that's what I'm here to do for you today. And it turns out to be really easy, right? Because marketing is not like steel production. It's not like surgery. You don't walk down the street and notice someone performing an appendectomy on the side of the street and say, oh, he could have done a different stitch with this or whatever. But with marketing, this is the case. We're hit with between 5,000 and 10,000 commercial messages every single day. And what I'd like to ask you to do for the next hour and a half, and then in the service of ruining your lives for the rest of your lives, is not think of marketing as an intrusion or an interruption, but rather a window into a firm's marketing and business strategy. If we can look at the communications of firms, especially profitable firms, and then reverse engineer them, think about what is the strategy underlying these communications, and then watch to see whether it works or not. We can tap into this ongoing marketing experiment that's happening all around us, all around the world. Most of my work right now, outside of the university, is with B2B firms. Big Picture has been adopted as the business planning strategy for all of Johnson & Johnson's medical device divisions. We're now teaching it in the Advanced Commercial Management Seminar at General Electric. And the reason I think that we're able to bring this to these B2B companies is because we leverage a very important fact, that humans can think in analogies. We can look and learn in one domain and transfer that learning to another domain. In this case, what I'd like to ask you to do, and I'm hoping that this will accomplish my objective of ruining your lives, is I'd like to ask you to look at B2C advertising and B2C strategy and ask yourself how you can translate it to your business. Not how you can use the little tactics like the Facebook and the RSS feeds or whatever, but actually to look at the strategy and leverage that strategy to make your business stronger. And so the big picture is designed to do that. At each stage of the process, from strategy to execution, we ask a series of questions. And as I said, I'm not going to be able to go through all of them, but what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time talking about this first bubble here, business objective. And in particular, I want to talk about a concept that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, which is core competence. How many of you think you know what a core competence is? All studied it, right? So, core competence is a concept that was proposed first by a gentleman named C.K. Prahalad. He was at the University of Michigan until he passed away, sadly, a couple years ago. A great man and a great thinker. But when I used to pass him in the halls, I used to joke with him that he didn't even understand what core competence was anymore. He wasn't leveraging it to its fullest extent. So I'd like to just dive into this a little bit and use an example, a couple of examples, to try to bring this to life, because I believe that core competence is at the foundation of your future success. And again, referring back to Dan's talk earlier, the answer is in this room. The answer to all of our problems is in this room. It's not in Washington. And I'm sorry to tell you, it's not in the academy either. I've been there. It's not there. The answer to these issues is sitting in this room with business leaders. So let's talk about core competence. Core competence is a skill that leads to a sustainable competitive advantage. Okay? Now, the reason that core competence leads to a sustainable competitive advantage is because it requires significant resource investment. You can come up with a new product feature, you can come up with a new process even, to a certain extent, and it can be duplicated. But if you, as an organization, have a skill or a set of skills that you've invested in and you continue to invest in over time, then even if your competition tries to replicate that, it will take them a certain amount of time to ramp up. And this is the source of the sustainability of core competence. It's not a strategic asset, it's not a feature, it's a skill of the organization. From that skill, we generate strategic assets. And these are the things that many corporations focus on, these tangible assets. Our product pipeline, our patents, our processes, our existing relationships with our customers, our brands, our corporate reputation. These are very important, obviously. But if we rely only on our strategic assets and don't continue to invest in them by investing in our core competence, they will eventually start to depreciate, just as any assets do, just as our infrastructure does. If we don't continue to invest, they will depreciate and we will eventually lose this competitive advantage. We talk in the big picture framework about what we call orphaned strategic assets. These are strategic assets which we're making money from right now, today, but we're not investing in them. And if we continue to fail to invest in them, eventually they will depreciate. So we have to think about our skill, our strategic asset, and then the final piece of this puzzle, which is our benefit. Now, what I'm going to ask you to think about when you think about benefits is not all of the different benefits that you provide your customers, which I'm sure are numerous. But I'd like to ask you to think about your differentiating benefit. Your differentiating benefit. We work with a aluminum extrusion company, Futura Industries, located in Utah. Several years ago, just as many industries, the president of this organization was approached by her customers, many of them, who said, look, we're getting a lower price for aluminum from China, and we'd like you to lower your price. She said no. But she didn't just say no. She said, our benefit to you is reliability and responsiveness. We deliver our product on time, and when you have some kind of special need, we respond quickly. That is what we charge for, that is the value we create, and that is the price you're paying. If you don't want that, you should go to these Chinese companies and purchase your aluminum there. If you ever want it in the future, please come back. She lost 25% of her customers. Within 6 months, every single customer came back. And I would argue it was not just a failure that these customers experienced when they went to China, but it was that seed that was planted in the back of their heads about the positioning of this company, the benefit it delivered. The best way to understand, in some cases, the benefit that you provide to your customers is for them to leave and come back. And they did. Dangerous way to do things, but reflects an underlying understanding of this link between core competence, strategic asset, and benefits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play an ad here, and I'm going to ask you to think about, for this firm, what the core competence, what the benefit, and what the strategic asset is.
Hi, Tom. I know it's your first day, but we could really use your help.
Yeah.
Thanks. We're just in a bit of a jam. All this has to get out today.
Yeah. I don't do shipping.
Oh, no. It's very easy. We use FedEx.com. Anybody can do it.
You don't understand. I have an MBA.
Oh, you have an MBA? In that case, I'll have to show you how to do it.
FedEx.com makes shipping so fast and easy. Even an MBA can do it. Relax, it's FedEx.
I play this for my MBA classes as soon as I walk in the door, just to get them level set. Okay, so let's think. Let's work, and I like to work backwards when I say communication. So what's the benefit they're delivering? Ease of use. Ease of use. So easy an MBA can do it. Okay. What strategic assets do they leverage in order to deliver that benefit? Low skill level. No, that would be a core incompetence of the users. Yes, that's a different lecture. Yeah, okay, their IT, and of course, behind that, they're back in logistics, right? The hub and spoke system, their strategic asset is that hub and spoke system and then the IT overlay on top of it. So in many firms that advertise, B2B firms, you can see the strategic asset in the communications. For B2C, you don't see it as often. When you look at a Procter & Gamble commercial, you won't see the strategic asset in the commercial, you'll only see the benefit. But you can start to think about what the strategic assets are. All right, what are the skills that drive that strategic asset? What core competence must they have in order to deliver this? Skill at IT? It's very simple, right? It's very simple, skill at IT and logistics. But the trick here is that the core competence piece of this puzzle means that they're continuing to invest in IT. They're continuing to invest in logistics so that if a competitor starts to want to attain this position, they can't keep up with them because we're continuing to improve it all the time. Core competence, strategic asset, and benefit. This is the root of what I'd like to talk to you about today. Innovation. If we link these three things together, we achieve innovation. As I was thinking about this particular speech, I was in Tokyo actually, on the day that Steve Jobs passed away. And I also that day spilled a can of Red Bull on my Apple Macintosh. It was a very bad day. So I had to go to the Apple store, and this is what was going on at the Apple store in Tokyo. And the same thing was going on around the world. I just finished reading the biography of Steve Jobs, and he's not the person I would like my son to aspire to be in many ways, but in the area of business and in the area of innovation, he had it right. He had a core competence. He had a set of strategic assets, and he focused on a single benefit. So I'd like to take you through for just a second a series of product innovations and then think about this connection, core competence, strategic asset, benefit in this particular case.
Today we celebrate the birth
you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
This commercial is famous for a number of reasons, but to me, the interesting strategic element is that he changed the benefit in an industry. Up to this point, the key benefits that people sought in computing were computing power, computing speed, and software. After Apple introduced this computer, the key benefit started to become ease of use. People talk about how to control markets all the time. Steve Jobs said, if you want to control the market, create the market. Change the benefit. Identify the benefit that is tied to your core competence, and then develop strategic assets so that you can deliver that benefit better than anybody else. Now, of course, this computer evolved, but more importantly, the fact that he was focused on the benefit of ease of use enabled him to cross categories. Apple Computer changed its name to Apple because they realized they weren't in the computing business. And you may not be in the steel business, right, or the fabrication business. Right? So for us to think about breaking boundaries, as we think about the future of our organization, is crucially important. Change the pricing structure of that industry, the distribution structure of that industry, and very importantly, Apple was not first to market on this product, nor were they first to market on any product that they introduced. But they were always best to market at delivering on the benefit that they had identified. So when we talk about innovation, I want to caution you not to think about being first, but rather to think about being best on your differentiating benefit. There are 3 other examples here. I'm not going to go through all of them. The iPad, the iPhone, okay? But the bottom line is for all of these, across all these product categories, across all of these years, they are examples of leveraging the same core competence, skill and design interface, the same strategic assets developed over time, and very importantly, delivering the same benefit. And as they delivered on this benefit, they increased the importance of this benefit to people. They shaped the market. When my client let her customers walk away and said, we are about reliability and responsiveness, their most important benefit was price. When they came back to her, their most important benefit they realized was reliability and responsiveness. As corporate leaders, it's our job not just to make the product, right, but to understand the value that we're creating and to communicate the importance of that value to our customers. When you ask the folks at Apple what their segmentation variable is, they don't talk about old people or young people. They're selling it to my father and to my son. Their segmentation variable is what they call machine love. They're targeting people who do or could love their machines. What does that mean? Machine love. Well, it turns out that it's very easy to identify someone's degree of machine love. You just go to them and ask them whether they have named any of the machines in their house. How many of you have named your cars? See, and they admit it. And way more than that have actually named their cars. They just not admit it. Many people name their vacuum cleaners. I know nobody in this room will admit that. All right. But this notion of the benefit and leveraging the benefit to say that the market is what we're talking about, and it comes out in the numbers. If you look at the distribution computer households, right? And the distribution of other digital devices and other electronic devices, you can see that people who own Apples, people who purchase Apples, people who are responsible for Apple's profitability are also very involved in other areas of machine law. Okay? So Apple is a great example of this, but this is a product example. And what I'd like to think about now is the flip side of products. Now I know Dan said, we shouldn't move to a service economy. That's a bunch of BS. But I'd like to ask you to think of it in a slightly different way. I'd like to kind of reconceptualize what a service economy is. Because in my mind, I agree, if a service economy is a bunch of consultants and lawyers running around, we're in deep, deep trouble. All right? But if a service economy is a service overlay on manufactured products, then we're in a perfect place. And I would imagine just about every person in this room has a service overlay on your products. You have a sales force. You partner with your customers to co-create products. You work with your customers after installation to service and improve the products. And you probably leverage your internal services to add a greater degree of value and differentiation to your products. So I want to talk to you for a little bit about services. Now, it's a little weird to move into a service overlay if you're a manufacturer, because there are a lot of differences between services and products. A lot of crucial differences. And they drive people who are used to working with hard objects a little crazy. All right? Because this bottle of water, when I manufacture this, right, it's sitting right here in front of me. After I've finished making it, it's sitting right in front of me. I can check it out to see if it's good or not. I can taste it. I can count it. I can do a lot of things to it. I can't do those things to services. So there are 4 elements of services that are crucially important that we have to consider as we're thinking about how to differentiate ourselves with a service overlay. And the first is that services are intangible. When I drink this bottle of water, and if I like it, my good feelings go on to this bottle of water. I feel good about the brand. When I drink my Coca-Cola and I go afterwards, the good feelings are captured by the brand name. When a service is performed, where do those good feelings go? Do they go onto your corporation? Do they go onto your product? Or do they go onto the salesperson or the service provider that was providing that product? To the extent that the value that you create is building up in particular people in your organization instead of building up in your brand or in your corporation, you're losing value. I go to a teller at a bank. She's really nice to me. I love her. She gives a biscuit to my dog every time I come, a lollipop for my kid. And then after a couple of years, the bank fires her and replaces her with an ATM. When she leaves the bank, her value leaves with her. Because my surplus, my good feelings towards that organization were invested in that person, not in the organization. So as you lay services on top of your products, it is crucially important that you use logos, taglines, anything to capture the value that you're creating so that it comes onto your organization and not just onto the people that are delivering it. The best example of this in the past has always been IBM. The old IBM sales guy with the blue suit and the red tie and the white shirt, a classic example of a uniform. So that no matter who was delivering the good service, it was always attributed to IBM, not to Jim or John or Mary. So they're intangible. They can't be inventoried. This is something I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but this is a crucially important element. I know I'm going to have an increase in demand on my products. I warehouse them. I cannot warehouse a service, which means I have to plan way more carefully for service delivery than I do for product delivery. And I plan pretty carefully for product delivery. All right? So the stakes are much higher, but you still have to achieve the same level of consistency with your services as you do with your products. So we have to pre-plan, We have to price to smooth demand, and we have to anticipate shifts in demand very, very carefully. Number 3, services are performed, not produced. When I drink that bottle of water, I don't need any help. I don't need someone to perform around that bottle of water. When you perform a repair service, when you develop specifications for a product, you co-develop them with your customers. The quality of that service is dependent on the quality of your customer. This is a very weird thing. The quality of this bottle of water is dependent on the quality of the bottle of water. That's it. But when you perform a service, who you have sitting across the table from you is going to determine how good that service is. My favorite example of this is in a healthcare examination. When a doctor performs a health examination on someone, if that patient is a good communicator, right, and is not afraid of the doctor, then the diagnosis, the probability of getting a correct diagnosis will be better. If the patient is a bad communicator, doesn't understand what the doctor's saying, then the probability of there being a bad diagnosis is higher as well. So what does this mean? This means we have to segment our markets. We have to identify customers who can understand and communicate their needs to us, and customers whose needs we can understand better. And then finally, services are difficult to standardize. So easy to standardize a product these days. Deming helped us with that. He figured it all out for us. But services, they have these pesky humans involved. And these humans have good days and bad days. We can't inspect them, we can't do these other things. So it's very difficult to standardize a service. So what have we done in the past? What have we done to take care of this problem? What do you do in your business when you have a problem with service irregularities or problems with your service providers? What's the kind of standard issue answer? Anybody know? You can script them, you can incentivize them, and you can put policies in. What's just the best thing to do? Say again? Train them, yeah. Training is good, yeah. Or you can replace them with a machine, right? You can get rid of them, right? Then you're standardized completely. So training is good. Training is important, but it's even better to just take the teller out and put an ATM in there, right? Take the factory worker out and put in a robot, right? Then they don't have good days and bad days anymore, right? And this has been the answer since the 50s. It's just to replace humans with machines. So let me give you this example. I've just started this daycare center, Christie's Daycare. All right, and you bring your child into my daycare center, your 3-year-old, your child's name is Jimmy, and you bring Jimmy in, you scan his card, and the door's open, and this voice says, "Welcome, Jimmy." And you shove Jimmy in, and the door's closed, and then over on one side is Jimmy's biological needs station, and his food station, and his education station, and everything is all technologized. No people. Do you want to bring your kid to my daycare center? Anybody want to? Because I need to know who it is. We need to talk later. So no, of course you don't, right? Because your argument would be obviously that there's no warmth there, there's no love, there's no human touch, there's all those kind of things. Now, some people would argue, especially in Silicon Valley, they would say, well, that's just a question of money. If you had enough money, you could actually come up with a system that does create an emotional connection. 70% of people who talk to artificial voices on phones, when the artificial voice says, "Thank you," the human says, "You're welcome," to the artificial voice. All right? So we are moving in a direction where technology has enabled us to replace humans in a lot of cases and achieve a level of standardization that we had not previously been able to achieve. But of course, we're not going to do it for everything. It's not going to work for Christie's Daycare. So what I'd like to ask you to think about is a different way of allocating and creating your services. So there are two aspects of services. One is whether they're performed performed in front of your customer or backstage? Is this a phone call or a call on my customer where I'm face-to-face with them? Or is this something I'm doing in the back end, tracking down a lost part, or something that they don't see but I'm working on? So one aspect of what we do is backstage front office. The other aspect of service delivery is whether it's custom or standard. Whether it's customized or standard. Do I do this service the same for every single customer, for example, billing, invoicing, or is it a customized service delivery such that I have to co-develop the product or the specifications with my specific customer, or I'm trying to track down something or service something that's broken? All right? Custom, standard, front office, backstage. What you can do is take every touch point that you have with your customers and put them into these 4 boxes, whether they're backstage or front office, and whether they're standard or custom. And what I'd like to ask you to think about doing is clearing these 2 boxes, because these are the bad boxes. This is where you don't want to be. You don't want to be here doing standardized activities in front of your customer. For 2 reasons. One is there is no added value. There's no perceived added value to a standardized activity. You're doing it over and over again, your customer really probably doesn't care about it. And the second is, because you're doing it in front of your customer, if you fail publicly. So we don't want to be in this box. The other box we don't want to be in is this one. These are custom services that we provide for our customers, but we're not doing it in front of them. Right? What is this? High-cost services, high-value services, but they don't see us doing them. When you hire consultants, you ever hire a consultant, they come and they work at your firm? Right? They would work much better at their office, but they work at your firm so you can see them, so that when you get the bill, you're not flaked out completely. Okay? So what we want to do is figure out a way to clear these 2 boxes. And we do it by following these 4 arrows. So the simplest one, and the one we see the most of, is we clear the standard front stage operation by mechanizing or automating. ATMs, kiosks. How many of you these days would rather go to an airline kiosk than go and stand in line and talk to someone at the counter? Me too. Okay? So that's a classic way to do it. Now, interestingly, in some cases, we're starting to see some backlash on this. Some grocery checkout lines, for example, that have been automated, they're replacing them back with humans again, because they're finding that they're not getting the speed from the automated checkout that they were hoping for. So we're having a little backlash for this. And this is not the only answer. The other way to go is to customize. So instead of making the service so standardized, let's find a way to make it more custom. This is the staff of the Four Seasons, or the Kempinski hotels. When you go into one of these hotels and you ask for a sandwich, you walk up to a random person and ask for a sandwich. That person accompanies you until you get the sandwich. They stay with you, even if they're a bellhop or a concierge or whatever. And then, of course, the other staff has to fill in order for this to happen. But this is an example of dramatizing the service to such an extent that your perceived value goes up and you can charge a higher price. Okay. Now, how do we clear this box? All right. How do we clear custom backstage? Stuff that we perform. It's high value add, but people don't see it. Well, we have to dramatize it. This is Benihana. They prepare the food in front of the customers. The custom procedure now happens in front of the customers. The table turns are 14 times higher than any other restaurant in that same category. 14 times higher. Okay. My daughter broke her elbow. The x-ray technician did an x-ray of her elbow. Instead of just coming out and saying she has a broken elbow, he came out with a computer and showed me the x-ray in 3 dimensions. Then I felt a little bit better about paying the $5,000 bill. So we want to clear these boxes. We want to clear these boxes, and in doing so, accomplish the true job of business, in my mind, which is to create and capture value. We don't want to just create it. We want to create and capture it. And in the end, we capture the value because our customers value what it is we produce. Because our customers are satisfied. So the final way we can change this is by standardizing. For example, I take an essay test and I make it a multiple choice test. I standardize the process, an inspection process, a repair process, a replacement process. And in clearing these boxes, we achieve this level of satisfaction. So think about your products, your services, your service overlays, your customer touch points, and think about where they fall in here, and think about where you could move them. And again, the decision to move down into this box versus moving up into this box is driven by your core competence. If you have skill in technology and process development, you should be moving up here. If you have a skill at employee relationship management, at customer relationship, HR, people skills, image management, you should be moving down here. If we clear these boxes, then we start to move towards this notion of customer satisfaction. Now, when I travel around the world and I talk to any size firms, especially to the sales and service organizations of those firms, I hear three complaints, and they're the same no matter where I go. The same no matter where I go. The first one is this: our customers don't value what they get from us. The second is that they focus on the negative aspects, they focus on our failures, and ignore the positive aspects of our service delivery. And then the third is that we're committing more and more resources to this service delivery, but we're not seeing an increase in satisfaction levels. We keep putting more money at it, but it's not necessarily helping. Do those ring true to you? Now, because I'm an academic, I have to answer a question with a question. So what I'd like to do is share with you kind of the three questions that I think underlie these problems. And the first one is a simple one. You know, if we increase our service, are our customers going to be more satisfied? You know, it seems like the answer should be yes, but we're not sure, right? And then the second is, if they're satisfied, will they be loyal? Or will they start offshoring? Will they change to the lower price brand? And then the third, and the most important, is, am I going to make more money by doing this? So let's look at all three of these. We'll start with the first one. Does enhanced service lead to increased customer satisfaction? And the answer is not if our service delivery is inconsistent. And as I said before, when we work with especially B2B firms, you know, you get spoiled by this whole manufacturing thing. It's so easy to make products consistent these days, right? But it's very difficult to make services consistent. And if they're inconsistent, we run into problems. And it's been interesting to see the solutions that have been developed to these problems. So let's think about service performance for a minute. If I just look at this phrase, service performance is operations, right? We solve it by training, as you said, training and incentives. But service performance is not the whole picture. There are two other elements to it. First is this notion of perceived service performance. It's not just the actual objective service performance, it's what your customers perceive to be that service performance. And they have different ideas about what's good and what's bad. Right? They may be having a good day perspective, so that perception of the service performance is going to change. And it's also influenced by this last piece of the puzzle, which is expectations. Human beings are adaptive. Their expectations change. They can change up, they can change down, and we have to take that into account when we're doing our service operations planning. Now, what's interesting is that this is training and operations in HR, but this and this, that's marketing. That's marketing. If your marketing and sales are not tightly integrated with your service operations, you're in trouble. So let's talk about expectations. who's at Duke University, came up with this concept known as the zone of tolerance. It's a wonderful concept. I love to talk about it. I love to think about it. And it's wonderful because it's a basic human concept. And the basic idea is this. We have this level of expectations that's determined by our environment. And if the company performs within that level of expectations, we're okay. Right? So you just bought a new car. You drive it up the driveway. Your neighbor comes out and says, Jim, how do you like your new car? What do you say? Love it. You have to say you love it, otherwise you're an idiot, right? No, I bought this terrible car, I hate it, or whatever, I don't know. So you say I love it, right? And so basically you bought the car, it's where you expected it to be, and it's performing, right? So then you drive it around for a week, and there's a little ding in the engine, a little noise, and you take it into the dealer, and they fix it. And then you drive up the driveway the next Saturday, and your neighbor says, how do you like your car? What do you say? Okay, it's okay. You still report it within here. You still report it within here. And you'll keep doing that. Even as the performance drops down, you'll keep reporting it as okay for a period of time. And then at some point, right, the straw occurs, right? You have to go to the dealer for the 7th time, or someone is rude to you, or whatever. And at that point, the company falls outside your zone of tolerance. You drive up the driveway, and maybe it's just this much worse than the week before, right? You drive up the driveway, and he says, how do you like your car? What do you say? Don't share it with me, right? All right, you say, and you don't only say it to him, you say it to everybody you know, right? So what we know about performance, service performance, and expectations is that as long as you stay within this zone of tolerance, then everything's fine. In fact, if you perform at a 5 and they'll report it as a 6. If you perform at a 7, they'll report it as a 6. You stay within there. But if you drop outside here, they start to report it down here. It's not this one-to-one relationship. If you get outside the zone of tolerance, things go badly for you. Okay, now, you all say to me, Christy, we don't do this. We never fail. We exceed expectations. Right? How many of you in this room have said to your employees, you need to exceed expectations? Yeah, you all, okay. This is the painful truth I'm going to tell you. That's why I had to make you laugh before, okay? We don't want to exceed expectations. Right? Why not? What happens when you exceed expectations? You raise the zone of tolerance. What you need to raise is the company capability. Because if you raise the zone of tolerance, you are setting yourself up for failure. Now, am I suggesting that you should just do a mediocre job? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But what I'm suggesting is that the most important thing is consistent performance.
Sometimes it feels like it could go on forever. It hurts. We know exactly how you feel. That's why we developed Hertz #1 Club Gold. No lines, no paperwork, no waiting. And Hertz never lost our in-car navigation system. At Hertz, we know exactly how you feel, so we have exactly what you need.
What is the promise? No lines. What else? No people. Covered parking. Okay? And the tagline, we know exactly what you need. Which I personally find insulting, since they don't know me at all, right? But I'm a little weird that way. Okay? But the notion that you can deliver everything is very interesting. And here, if you look at the ad, there's a little super here. Hertz #1 Club Gold Canopy Service, available on airport at 42 locations. When they introduced this campaign, they had this product that they were promoting available in 30% of their high-traffic locations. So if you were a Hertz customer at this time, and your expectations were raised to expect full canopy service, there was a 2 out of 3 chance that your expectations would not be met. A 2 out of 3 chance. Now, they were the first people to come up with this whole canopy service, so they exceeded expectations in 1/3 of the cases, but they failed to meet expectations in 2/3 of the cases. All right, the second thing, this is the never lost system. I call it the sometimes lost system. Nominal daily fee where available, again, only available in 30% of locations. example of the misalignment of marketing and service operations, and marketing and product. If you do not promise what you deliver, then how can you expect your customers to value what you deliver? If you don't deliver what you promise, how can you expect your customers to not value price more than anything else? So our first rule is to manage expectations and not to make a promise that we cannot keep. Never. My aluminum extrusion client, very, very exceptional operation, and she was very proud to show me her on-time delivery. 85% on-time delivery within 2 weeks, 85%. And I said, well, that means that in 15% of the cases, you're failing to meet your delivery date. That's not okay. What's your, what can you do with a kind of a 98% delivery certainty? She said, well, I can do 3 weeks. So we set our promised delivery dates for 3 weeks and then started to move those up before we made other promises. So you manage expectations, not by lowering them, but by raising your performance to a point where you can deliver on them consistently. All right, now the second question. Does customer satisfaction lead to loyalty? There have actually been a number of studies on the relationship between customer satisfaction and loyalty, and in 50% of those studies, there was no correlation found between customer satisfaction and loyalty. There was a meta-analysis done, and half the time, when there was an increase in satisfaction, there was no increase in loyalty. So think about this. You invest all this money to increase your customer satisfaction, and it's a coin toss as to whether you're going to keep your customers. That's a little scary. Why? Well, I believe it's because expectations can continue to adapt upward, and if they do, we're in trouble. So, let's think about it. What's the promise? Price. Very, very straightforward promise. Very, very straightforward. Oh, by the way, let's just do the core competence strategic asset part of this. How are they able, what's their strategic asset? How are they able to deliver these low prices? Say again? Yes, squeeze the razors, right. Abuse, just abuse. They have a skill at abuse, yeah. Well, yeah, and actually, this has changed over time. But I mean, originally, Walmart set up an EDI system, electronic data interchange system with their suppliers, and it enabled them to understand when they were out of stock more quickly, and that allowed them to not be out of stock, which allowed them to lower the cost, which allowed them to keep their prices low. So in the end, at the beginning, foundationally, their strategic asset was not that dissimilar from FedEx's. It was a skill at IT and logistics. Strategic asset of IT and logistics. Interestingly, FedEx benefit is ease of use. Walmart's benefit is low price. You can leverage the same type of strategic assets and the same type of core competence to deliver any number of benefits.
To me, design is about simplicity. It's about inspiration.
It's revolutionary.
It's handy.
It's adventurous. It's a new perspective.
It's fluid. It's sweet.
It's crazy.
Everyone
And the most famous story from Nordstrom's, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard it in this room, about the gentleman that came into Nordstrom's with a tire to return it, and the Nordstrom's employee accepted the tire back as a return and gave him a refund, even though Nordstrom's doesn't sell tires. Offer the customer the best possible service, selection, quality, and value. In this century, the best possible of each one of these cannot be delivered by the same company. There is one competitor who delivers value, one that will deliver selection, one that will deliver service, one that might deliver customization. But there is not a company, given this relationship between core competence, strategic assets, and benefits, that can deliver all of these things. And this unfolded in stock charts. And this is what happens. We exceed customer expectations. Customers are adaptive, so what do? Their customer expectations increase. Now, if you're a hard worker, then what do? You try to meet those new expectations. And what does that require? It requires increased resources. If you allocate resources to meet these new customer expectations, you have increased costs, and of course, then you have decreased revenues. So you're on a treadmill. At some point, you move off that treadmill. Unfortunately, it's not in a good way. At some point, you will fail to meet customer expectations. And then you find yourself in a death spiral. You have a loss of customers, you have decreased revenues, and it's over for you. And if you look at the stock charts for Walmart, Target, and Nordstrom's over this period of time, you see this unfold in a very clear and unfortunate way. Target versus Nordstrom over this period of time, Walmart versus Nordstrom. Core competence, strategic asset, benefit. A clear focus. So, number 2, manage production. Consistency before brilliance. Do we want to be brilliant? Yes. But if you have a choice between sometimes achieving brilliance and always consistently performing at a level slightly below that, choose the consistency. If you have a star performer who's on the front line, pluck him off the front line and get him to train everybody else. Okay? Consistency before brilliance. Now that brings me to my third question, which is, does customer satisfaction lead to increased profitability? Of course, that's what we're looking for. That's why we're doing this. And again, the answer is not if the satisfaction is not tightly tied to the firm's positioning strategy. So let's look at an example of this. Okay, what is the promise? Again, low fares, all right, so we had Apple at the high end promising ease of use and charging a lot. Southwest at the low end promising low fares. Anybody fly Southwest in here? Okay, good. All right, so we all know what we're talking about. Now, they've changed to assigned seats in the more recent past, but let's move back in time about 5 years, the time of this commercial. If you went to a Southwest gate agent and asked them for an assigned seat about 5 years ago, what would they say? They would say no. And in fact, I actually did this. I had a seat on a United flight, but I went to a Southwest gate agent because I do these strange things sometimes, and I said, "Excuse me, I'd like an assigned seat on this flight." And she didn't just say no. She didn't just say no. She said, "Ha ha, you must have us mistaken for some other airline. We are a short-haul, low-cost carrier. We will get you from point A to point B as quickly and cheaply as possible. If you want an assigned seat, go down to gate B and pay $800 for a ticket on United." So So it goes beyond apologizing. It goes beyond just saying, I'm sorry, we don't have that, that's not what we do. It gets to the core of the employees of Southwest understanding what it is that they do and being able to do it. And they say people are drinking the Kool-Aid. You know, the flavor of the Kool-Aid changes depending on which firm you're in. But every profitable firm, every sustainably growing firm has employees that understand what they're supposed to be delivering, and they're empowered to deliver it. Now let's look at the other side of the coin.
Where you go in life is up to you. There's one airline that can take you there. United. It's time to fly.
Okay, what's the promise? Say again? Hopes and aspirations, right? Even if you can't even put the right color shoes on in the morning, you're going to get a job, right? And notice the caring flight attendant, because that's the only place you're going to see it. It's in this commercial. I was actually giving a speech, and Glenn Tilton, who was then the he was the CEO of United through the bankruptcy, and he was sitting next to me, and he explained to me that this commercial was originally shot where the flight attendant was gently placing a blanket over the passenger. But then they did a series of cost cutting, and they pulled all the blankets off the plane. So they had to reshoot the commercial to just show her, well, what can we do now? We can put the window down, right? All right. So, great example, right, of simultaneously overpromising and not only under-delivering, but completely disabling your employees. And the best part of this, and not best for United, but best for me as an academic, was this when they went through their bankruptcy and they looked at their satisfaction ratings, you know, they were concerned. They said they were too low. So they went to their employees and they said, look, if you don't get your satisfaction ratings up, we're not going to bonus you at the end of the year. We're going to tie satisfaction bonus to that incentive. And oh, by the way, we're cutting 20% of the workforce. Okay? Simultaneously disempower your employees and then promise something that even if they were empowered, they probably couldn't deliver. And again, you look at it over the period of time prior to the bankruptcy. Up here is Southwest Airlines in terms of satisfaction and in terms of their share price change. Now, of course, Southwest had a lot of other things going for it at the time, lower labor costs, and they afford lots of fuel and stuff. But that doesn't affect necessarily your satisfaction ratings. And then, of course, the legacy carriers. Now, of these four airlines, United, Northwest, American, and Southwest, which of these airlines do you think spent more on customer service, either on a per customer or on a total basis? Do you think Southwest was the highest spender on customer service? No, absolutely not. It was one of these three. I believe it was Northwest at the time. Okay? Okay. What's interesting is that you spend money on customer service. A lot of times when you're spending money on customer service, what you're doing is investing in your complaints department. I went to a firm one day and I said, you know, what's your core competence? And the CEO said, oh, it's customer service. It's customer service. And I looked behind him at the customer service manager, and she's sitting there going, you know, and I said, well, why do you say that? You know, prove it. And he said, well, look at our huge customer service department. Right? And it was this giant room full of people answering complaint calls. You show me a firm with excellent customer service, and I'll show you a firm that doesn't have a customer service department. Right? Because it's embedded in the organization. And even if you go into the downturn, the last downturn, not this one, but the last one, in partially this one that hasn't ended yet. Even the drop in share price wasn't as bad for Southwest, and their satisfaction continued to go up. Okay, in good times and in bad. Okay? It's still a correlation between satisfaction and share price when you have a clear message. Okay? So that's number 3. Manage the memory. Emphasize successes. Right? Take credit for your successes. Take credit for what it is that you do well. We are a short-haul, low-cost carrier. We will get you from point A to point B as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then reinterpret your failures. Is it really a failure? Is it a failure that Southwest doesn't have assigned seats? No, it's part of their business model. Is it a failure if United fails to care for their passengers, given that promise? Yes, it's a failure. Many years ago, when we were testing out this entire system, this whole framework, we were in Panama. I went to Panama because I thought, well, we can try this in Panama. If it doesn't work, nobody will hear about it. Nobody will know. And we went to work for this grocery chain in Panama, the number 1 grocery chain in Central America now. And they identified freshness as their benefit. They identified agro-industrial operations as their core competence. And they went on to align their entire organization around that core competence, the strategic assets associated with that, and then that benefit of freshness. And they started talking about freshness. But they had an issue, and it was this. Their store managers, especially their produce managers, were being incentivized based on out of stocks. Right? If they were out of stock more than 10% of the time, they didn't get their monthly bonus. So you have this produce manager, and he's holding this head of lettuce in his hand. It's a little nasty, looks a little nasty. What do I do with it? Right? If I throw it away, then I'll keep up our freshness perspective. If I put it on the shelf, I get my bonus at the end of the month. They put it on the shelf. Right? So, step 2, we had to change the incentives. You have to align the incentives to reflect the benefit that you're trying to deliver. So they readjusted their incentives so that it wasn't incentivized based on something that they weren't supposed to be delivering. And then someone would come into the store and say, "Where's your head lettuce?" And the person in the produce department would say, "Lo siento, I'm sorry." So then they started training. And now, if you go into any of these stores, and if there doesn't happen to be something on the shelf, like head lettuce, here's what happens. Customer comes in and says, "Where's your head lettuce?" The produce manager says, "There is no head lettuce in this store today because in this market today, there is no head lettuce that is fresh enough to meet our standard of quality. You can go to another chain in this market and find some head lettuce, but it will not be good fresh head lettuce. As soon as there is good fresh head lettuce, we will have it on the shelf in this store because that's our job. But until then, we cannot sell you something that's not fresh." So we've transformed from misaligned incentives and random promises to a focused promise, aligned incentives, but most importantly, a reevaluation of what really constitutes a failure. Yes, we don't have our products first to market, but they're the most reliable, and if you want the most reliable product, wait, and we will bring it to you. Or, yes, we always have our products first to market, which means that sometimes there are some issues with the products, and we'd like to work with you to work those bugs out. That's why we're the most innovative, cutting-edge firm in this market. Right? It is not a failure to be not first to market if your positioning is not innovation. It is a failure if your positioning is cutting-edge or innovation. And the flip side is also true. So we look back at these things. We manage the memory, we emphasize success, and we reinterpret what failure really means, both internally and externally. So, these 3 questions. The answer is all of these things can work if we actively manage all aspects of the process. Actively manage all aspects of the project. So what I'd like to share with you is this notion of what I like to call corporate self-esteem. My buddy Ben Tilton told me that, our satisfaction ratings are low, and so we're feeling bad about our corporation. Their customer satisfaction ratings drove their corporate self-esteem. If their ratings were low, they felt bad about the corporation, they started to try to take action. But I think about satisfaction ratings as a thermometer. You take the thermometer and start messing with it to try to lower your temperature? No, you go home and have some chicken soup, or take massive quantities of drugs like I do, right? You try to fix the problem, not look at the metric and try to fix the metric. So what I'd like to ask you to do, and what I think that companies like Southwest Airlines and Google and Apple and Amazon do very effectively, Zappos now, IBM has been doing it for a long time, is they let their corporate self-esteem drive their customer satisfaction. Their internal understanding of what their organization is about is the source of their customer satisfaction. And when they see these ratings start to wobble, they go back here and try to fix this. I stole this concept from the psychological literature. Nathaniel Branden has written extensively on self-esteem, and I'd like to take, what I've done is taken his 6 pillars of personal self-esteem and then laid them onto what we've been talking about with satisfaction. So managing expectations, what is that? It's managerial responsibility and conscious management. Managerial responsibility and conscious management, right? We take responsibility for the expectations we create. We do not approve communications that make promises that our organization cannot deliver on. We pay attention to the promises that are being made by our organization in an active way. If we don't take responsibility for this, and we instead say to our sales force, go out and make a 10% increase in sales next year, and I don't care how you do it, or I'm not watching while you do it, we're not taking managerial responsibility. We're not conscious managers. We will not have corporate self-esteem. Number 2, manage production. This is purposeful management and managerial assertiveness. This is a very interesting area because when you talk about consistency before brilliance, you're talking about managing potential star performers in a way that enhances the entire organization instead of just the star performers. This is a huge managerial challenge. A huge managerial challenge. I have this fantastic salesperson. Why shouldn't I just let him go out and do everything he can do? Right? I'll make more money that way. In the short run, you will. In the long run, you need to get his skills and get them disseminated throughout the rest of the organization. The same with service people. You can only do this from the top. You can only do this with a sense of purpose and a sense of assertiveness. And then finally, manage the memory. Daniel Branden talks about integrity. I talk about managerial integrity. The root of the word integration of execution and strategy, is integrity. It means that it hangs together. It's very simple. You've been seeing these slides over and over again about simplifying things. I believe that my contribution and your contribution as well to your organizations is not to make things more complex, not to make things more complicated, but rather to simplify them. And in simplify them, achieve a level of integrity. Carl White talks about the 3 stages of organizations. The first he calls naive simplicity. Naive simplicity. We don't know what we don't know. We're basically flying blind. The second, confused complexity. We're starting to take a look at our increasingly dynamic and complex environment, our complex supply chain, and things are looking pretty freaky. All right? We're not quite sure what we should pay attention to, what we should prioritize, how we should execute. And then the third stage, which is the stage we're seeking to attain. And that is profound simplicity. And profound simplicity is we have a clarity about identifying the key factors that are most important for our business going forward. Do we completely ignore the other ones? Absolutely not. But we have a couple of key words: machine love, freshness, value, design, innovation, reliability, convenience, customization. And those words become our mantra. And when we achieve managerial integrity, and we align our core competence, our investment in our core competence, our strategic assets, and everything in support of not several benefits, but one benefit. And in doing so, we increase the importance of that benefit in the marketplace, and we start to shape the marketplace. We start to change people's importance. In the old days of marketing, we thought, here's what people need, and we're just going to change our confidence so that we can give them what they need. In new marketing, we understand that both of these can be changed. How people evaluate things, what they think is most important, can change over time. And we can change our ability to deliver it. Integrity is the alignment of those two things. This integrity comes not from a 5-year plan, but from what the organization does every single day. Right? Most issues of integrity we face are not big issues, but small ones. Yet the accumulated weight of our choices has an impact on our sense of self, and for the corporation has an impact on our corporate self-esteem. So what I would ask you, when you leave this conference, is not to go back to your organization and issue a new vision statement, but rather think about these everyday things that occur where we can manage expectations, where we can manage production, and where we can manage the memory. So I'd like to revisit these questions and these concerns. Our customers don't value what they get from us. I'd like to flip this around. It doesn't do any good to blame the customers anyway. We don't correctly value what we produce. We don't correctly value what we produce. We're getting price pressures from Asia, so we start thinking about price. Instead of thinking about what it is that we produce, what we're good at, what we can develop. Number 2, our customers focus on the negative and ignore the positive aspects. Is that their fault? Of course not. It's our fault. We don't effectively communicate the value of our products and services to our customers. It is our job as an organization, and this is what I mean when I say big in marketing, it is our job as an organization to clearly and effectively communicate the value of our products and services before the sale, during the experience, and then after the experience. My favorite example of this is an airline in terms of managing the memory. I mean, and they still do this to a certain extent. For a long time, when you landed, I don't know if you guys probably travel so much, you probably have heard this a million times. You know, you land, and the pilot comes on and says, or the flight attendant says, we've just landed, and we know you have your choice of carriers today, so we'd like to thank you for flying, Delta Airlines, or American Airlines, or whatever. Right? We'd like to thank you. Like, thank you. Like, the only reason you chose us was because you were being nice to us. I mean, I always imagine the announcement being something like this. We just landed 10 minutes early. You see that plane over there? That's an American plane. They landed 20 minutes late. We're early. We're early. In fact, we're early 90% of the time. Isn't this great? Are you happy to be on this plane? I mean, you need to take credit when you do something well. You can do it with humor, but you need to take credit. And don't take actions that automatically reduce your differentiation. And then finally, we're committing more and more resources to customer service with little increase in satisfaction levels. Let's rethink this. We let our customers direct our strategy instead of managing our customers and our strategy. We have to do both of these things. And it's not some kind of an answer at the back of the book, right? But rather, an ability to deal with a dynamic environment, not simply by reacting to it, but by understanding that to a certain extent, we can change that environment. To a certain extent, we can change what people value. If you take a look at the sustainably growing companies over the last 15 years, every single one of them did more than just react to customer needs. Every single one of them shaped the market by aligning their core competence, their strategic assets, and their benefits. If our customers manage our company, we go out of business. Right? At Walmart, right? Walmart has put more people out of business than anybody else in the last 20 years, right? Why? Because they manage the people that were supposed to be managing them. All right. So this is step one, the big picture. This is business objective. There are many more steps, and what you've seen here in this presentation is available on our website, and you can go and click through it and look at all the ads and look at everything and look at the various links. So this is available to you to march your way through. And as you think about it, I'd like to ask you to think about these questions that we're asking at each stage of the game. Who are we? What are we good at? And where are we going? And in terms of core competence, what are we good at? What are our strategic assets? And what benefits can I deliver based on those strategic assets?
Does your dare do that? Oh. Oh. And I thought you said your dad did not back. That was not my talk.
You know, I first played this clip when I was, gosh, it must have been 8 years ago, and my son was 7 years old, and I showed it to him, and he started speaking with this horrific French accent for like a year. Mademoiselle, I would like to have my dinner now. It's like a nightmare. But there were two really crucial pieces of wisdom in this clip that I think are very important for the people in this room. The first is, do you have a home? How many of you have had that thought where you said, you know, that's just what I've been saying, you idiots. You don't say it out loud, maybe you're too polite, but you're thinking it. And what does this have to do with? It has to do with the language that we use, the vocabulary. And in marketing and increasingly in business strategy, you know, we've just been making up words, right and left, making them up. So that when someone says something like metric or segmentation or even marketing objective, depending on what business school you went to or what organization you worked at, it means a completely different thing. So the first thing we do if we want to achieve alignment in our organization is make sure that our vocabulary is common, that we're speaking with a common language, that we understand what core competence means, that we have a common understanding of what our benefit means. What does convenience mean? What does freshness mean? And how do we articulate it throughout the organization? So having a common vocabulary. And then, of course, the second piece of this clip. Does your dog bite? What's the right question? Does this dog bite? All right? Dan mentioned this before, asking the right questions. Now, how many of you thought, when I asked that question, how many of you thought, is this your dog? Right? Anybody think that? Right? Now, if you say, is this your dog, you have to ask a second question, right? Does your dog bite? You just doubled your market research budget. Right? Our goal in this century, right, is to improve our return on our marketing investment. Right? We've improved our return on many other investments. We've improved our return on our capital investment, on our investment in labor. But we have not done such a good job, particularly in the B2B space, of improving our return on our marketing investment. And we may think that because we're in business to business, we don't have to worry about that. I would argue that exactly the opposite is true. Big M marketing is aligning your sales force, aligning your service organization, aligning new product development. And your return on marketing investment, increasing that return on marketing investment, is the source of your sustainable growth for the next 10 years. Now the problem, as the problem that we discussed with services, is that our model for return on investment is a manufacturing-based model. You know, you guys who are buying pieces of equipment have it so easy when you're thinking about ROI, right? You just buy this stuff, you know, and then you say, well, how much did it increase my efficiency or lower my cost or whatever, you know, or increase my value? And then you multiply and divide and you come up with your ROI. You take the net present value, you're done. It's pretty easy to calculate your return on investment for equipment, and to a certain extent for labor, right? But you can't take that same approach with marketing. You can't say, oh, I spent this much in marketing and what's my market share? There's a different model there. And I know there was a question earlier to Dan about, you know, how do we deal with Wall Street? How do we deal with Wall Street and stand in front of Wall Street if we maybe don't have, you know, what they say they're looking for that quarter? Right? And I would suggest that it has to do with the model that we use and articulate the model very clearly. For investment in capital equipment, it's I buy this piece of equipment and it increases my efficiency by X. For investment in marketing, the model is a little more complicated. The model is I take my marketing dollars, I use them to target my customers, either my existing or my potential customers. I leverage my understanding of the beliefs of those customers and then try to change those beliefs. So change them from valuing price to valuing service, change them from valuing innovation to valuing reliability. I have to change their beliefs. And then from there, I change their behaviors. Bodies, beliefs, behaviors, and then of course, once they buy the product, I can call in my people who are doing the capital return on investment calculations. I can multiply it and come up with bucks. Bodies, beliefs, behaviors, bucks. Right? It's a simple model, but it's not as simple as other models that Wall Street tends to respond to. Jeff Bezos from Amazon went in front of the public markets every quarter and showed them how much money he had lost. And every quarter his stock price went up. Every quarter his stock price went up because he articulated a model. And his model was, if we acquire this many customers, and they purchase this much, and we have this margin, then in this many years or this many quarters, we will see this kind of profitability. And he hit his numbers. They just weren't revenue numbers. So I wouldn't suggest to you that you try to stand in front of Wall Street and say, you know, don't worry about it, it's fine, you know, it's going to be okay next quarter, trust me. But rather, articulate your model and let people know where you are in that model. Maybe you're in the part of the model where you're building product pipelines so that you can acquire new customers. Maybe you're in the part of the model where you're revising your product mix so that you can meet the needs of your existing customers in 3 other business areas. If the model isn't clear in your organization, then there's no way that anybody outside your organization is going to use that model to evaluate your performance. If they don't use your model to evaluate your performance, they're going to use their model. And I'll tell you, I've had these Wall Street analysts in my class. They were all my students. You don't want them using their model to evaluate your company. Trust me on this. So ask the right questions. Focus on your return on marketing investment. And focus on that return based on a model that reflects what's actually happening. customer satisfaction, even revenues and market share. Those are lagging indicators. They're not metrics that we can act on. What we do to identify is leading indicators. How well does my organization understand its mission? How much have I invested in my core competence? How do my strategic assets stack up against my competition? And how enabled is my organization to deliver the benefits that I'm promising? Bodies, beliefs, behaviors, thoughts. I just want to leave you with the three most important words in marketing strategy. They are alignment, alignment, and alignment. Alignment of strategy and execution. Very simply, investing in what we can deliver, promising that, and then delivering on that promise. That's alignment of strategy and execution. Channel alignment. Aligning the channel with the understanding that we were all in the business of delivering a benefit to the end customer. No matter where we are in that supply chain, our job is to deliver a benefit to the end customer. And what we need to do is align that channel in order to deliver that benefit. And then finally, and most importantly, organizational alignment. All right? Make sure that everyone in your organization understands what benefit you're trying to deliver. If the people within your organization don't understand that and aren't incentivized to deliver on that, you will never achieve sustainable growth. As you begin to explore these concepts, there are some places you can go to talk to other people who are leveraging the big picture framework right now to align their organizations. You're going to be, I just talked about digital tomorrow. I'm now in 4 different spaces, right? Not because I want to be, but because I have to be. So we have a LinkedIn site, a Twitter, a website, and then there's a link to the book as well. I'd like to ask you to just remind yourselves one more time that whatever actions you take to improve your chances for sustainable growth are not big actions, but very small, everyday actions. And I would like to emphasize one more time that is the people in this room that are going to turn those charts around that Dan showed a little bit earlier. So I'd like to do my part, and I hope I've done my part to empower you a little bit to make that happen. And with those tools, I'm also, unfortunately, giving you the responsibility of actually making it happen. So good luck with that. And thank you very much.
I have good news and bad news for Christy. The good news is that was a fantastic talk. Would you agree? The bad news was you exceeded expectations, and that plane you have this afternoon, you're not going to manage to keep you. We're just going to keep you here. So seriously, thanks. Great job. Let's have a little fun here. Trivia question. How many of you have been attending CEN conferences for some time? Quite a few. Okay, good. And then how many of you are golfers, by the way? And 2 reasons to ask that question. One, for now. Can we see Christy here? See Christy at the CEN conference? Raise your hand. See, they're getting older. Okay, so keep your hands raised. Keep your hands raised. Okay. Plus or minus a year, I have a sleeve of Pro V CEN golf balls for the year that Christy appeared